Good morning, preppers. Welcome to Goshen Prepping, another edition of Goshen Prepping. And time is short and growing shorter. We're going to jump right into our articles today, and I want to show you the first one we have here. Look at this. Russia is urgently buying large amounts of potassium iodide, a compound that protects from nuclear radiation. Now, two things about this I want to point out. Number one, Russia could be doing this for multiple reasons. Even though Russia has been doing a lot of saber rattling, saying, hey, we're going to possibly use nuclear weapons against Ukraine or the United States or NATO interest, etc., and continuously keeps saying that. And I don't at all discount him doing that. And by the way, this video is less about the politics of what's happening in Russia, because people get very heated and fired about this. And it's more about the preparedness part. So make sure you watch the whole thing, because this is not simply just about, oh, look at this person's bad. We're not saying that, although we could. Okay. In this case, even though he's actually putting out a lot of rhetoric saying that he could use nuclear weapons, and by the way, Putin has very blatantly said that for him, there's no difference between conventional and nuclear. Because when we actually look at a scale of weapons, like from a firecracker to the largest thermonuclear bomb there is, he sees it as just one scale. We in the United States, and most of Western countries, by the way, see them as separate. There's conventional and nuclear. And that's why I have two separate terms for those. And so for us, taking it into the nuclear side of it is we're like, oh my gosh, why would you do that? Whereas he's said, well, look, there's no difference. It's just a large weapon. Okay. So either A, he is actually making preparations with his soldiers right here by saying that buying large amounts of potassium iodide because there could be a nuclear attack coming, and understand that if he does attack Ukraine, for example, then the radiation fallout could come back on Russia. And I'll show you a map about prevailing winds in just a moment about that. So he wants to make sure the people, and more importantly, the elite people there, the higher ups, the ones who run the government and in the military, are protected. I'm not so sure he's looking at average everyday citizens there, trying to protect them from nuclear radiation. But the second thing I want to talk about is potassium iodide. If you didn't know, potassium iodide, simply put, just protects your thyroid gland. I want to be clear. People think there's lots and lots of false information about nuclear when it comes to YouTube, and be very careful about this. But all potassium iodide is protects your thyroid gland. Your thyroid gland, by the way, takes iodine in heavy amounts and actually makes a hormone called triiodothyronine and tetraiodothyronine. Most people just call them T3 and T4. And those T3 and T4 hormones go through the body and increase your metabolism. It's that simple. So the more metabolism you need, maybe you're younger, you actually do a lot of running and stuff, you'll actually make lots of T3, T4 to give yourself the energy. Whereas sometimes as you get older, you're not getting as much T3, T4, or of course we actually have diseases too, where those change as well. Now, since the iodine goes to the thyroid gland and is collected there, iodine is one of those elements. There's 130, by the way, but it's one of those elements that becomes radioactive when there's nuclear detonation nearby. Okay, so if you actually have a nuclear detonation nearby, or what we call neutron activation, it changes the iodine. It's still iodine, but now makes the iodine radioactive. So the iodine that's in your body or some food you ate, if that radioactive iodine goes to your thyroid gland, well, guess what? It can far more easily cause thyroid cancer. And that's all potassium iodide protects you from, is thyroid cancer. Not any other type of nuclear problems, no other type of cancer, it's just thyroid. Okay, because we are more susceptible to that. Okay, and so what you do is when there's nuclear detonation, you take potassium iodide. You can simply look up the dosages. But by the way, I'm going to talk about videos about this in a minute where you can get those dosages. And so, oh my gosh, a nuclear detonation. So you take your supply of potassium iodide, 1 pill a day, and it floods your thyroid gland with regular, non-radiated iodine. And so therefore, when the radioactive iodine tries to go in there, your thyroid's basically saying, oh no, I'm full, I don't need you. Some still will make it in, by the way, but it drastically decreases the chances of you getting thyroid cancer. It doesn't flush it from your body. It doesn't protect you from other types of radiation. It doesn't really stop radiation per se. I mean, even in this article, it says a compound that protects from nuclear radiation. It would be more appropriate to say a compound that protects the thyroid gland only from nuclear radiation. But of course, we're only looking at a headline there. Okay. So long story short, and with that in mind, by the way, and I'll show you, that's the very next video you'll see a pop up at the end, is I actually did a whole nuclear series on nuclear radiation, fallout, all those different things. 5-part series, because I was a nuclear specialist in the military. It is something I know very well, and there's a lot of false information out there put on by just the general public. Okay, the general public has a lot of information they don't really get. Okay, cool. All right, so anyways, either way, it doesn't matter if Russia's trying to protect themselves or from a nuclear attack on Ukraine, or also Russia's claiming Ukraine is shelling a nuclear power plant there that was captured by the Russians. Again, are they, aren't they? That's not the point of this video. It's not a political video. Okay, they're simply they could either just be simply trying to protect themselves from what they're claiming the Ukrainians are doing, or they're doing it in anticipation of possibly sending nuclear weapons into Ukraine. Russia's getting ready. That's the moral of this story. Okay, so next article says how Kiev, isn't it funny how we used to call it Kiev? Residents are reacting to the threat of a nuclear strike on the capital. So what are they doing there? And that's what they're worried about, is actually a strike on the capital of the country. Let's see. There's all kinds of stuff here I want to point out. And they've been reading lots of articles on the internet about what should be done if that happens, and should start stocking up on supplies. He stocked up on food. I love this sentence. You ready for this? Stocked up on food, water, and adhesive tape to seal the windows and protect the home from radioactive dust. Radioactive dust? What is radioactive dust? Oh, something that doesn't really exist. Again, another thing that's not true, because they read it from the internet. Okay, they read it from watch other YouTube channels who say that there's radioactive dust, and they'll tell you that under windows you should put adhesive tape on there or plastic to prevent radioactive dust from coming in. With a nuclear detonation, there's no radioactive dust. I mean, if it is, it's so minimal, it's not effective, even in the fallout. The actual fallout are actual pieces of glass or sand. They're very heavy and they fall to the ground. In fact, so much so, I mean, infants are different, but so much so as an adult, standing in the fallout is not good because it's radioactive. It's actually like zapping my body. Think of it that way. But if I have to walk through fallout, I don't even have to wear a mask because I can't breathe in the sand or pieces of glass. There is no per se radioactive dust. Something to keep that in mind. But this is actually proves my point that be careful just watching other channels or reading stuff, because somebody will say it on one channel, then the next channel will get it from them, then the next one. Next thing you know, you have all the channels saying the same false garbage about radioactive dust. So it's very interesting they put that on here. All right, so with that, whoops, I do not want to search for Zillow. Let's see. You want to make sure they have raincoats. Yeah, that is actually good. Oversized shoes, gloves, respirators. Again, not necessary, because they got this from, articles on the internet. Don't you love the bad information we got the internet now? Okay, but here's actually more important. Let's go ahead and keep going. There is a non-zero probability that it'll happen somewhere here, like in Kiev, and we'll have to get evacuated points on our own. So it's a non-zero probability. So do you understand that term? Non-zero probability. In other words, guaranteed it's going to happen. There's no longer a zero probability now that that's actually going to happen and take place. So with that, that's frightening. Okay, that's frightening that we're actually looking at a possible nuclear exchange. But Ukraine in 1991, when they actually became independent, gave all their nuclear material, either destroyed or gave it to Russia in exchange for Russia making like safe nuclear power for them. And therefore, they actually have no cards to play in this situation. There's nothing really stopping Putin per se, except for the world saying you shouldn't do it as far as doing a nuclear attack on Ukraine. He's backed into a corner and just conscripted 300,000 soldiers. I mean, draft in Russia is mandatory anyway, but bringing up 300,000, and have you seen the protest and people trying to flee the country because of this? Don't back Putin into a corner. I've said this many times. He will come out fighting. He will not end up with egg on his face. So definitely pretty frightening with there. Okay, got more Z's on there. Look at this, but even more so, Poland is starting to hand out anti-radiation tablets, potassium iodide, as the battle rages around Ukraine, and they even say as the nuclear power plant. And Putin issues fresh nuke threat in a ranting speech. I don't really even need to go further on this. It does show the potassium iodide on here, but even more so, it's just important that they're doing this as the battle rages around the Ukraine nuclear power plant. And so again, that kind of corroborates that, well, maybe Putin is simply just getting the potassium iodide for his people and his soldiers and such because of this nuclear power plant. You would think that. You would think that. But then he orders his fresh nuke threat, which he continuously does. You know, the Russian does this stuff all the time anyway. We'll annihilate you for doing this, but, you know, they don't always carry through on their words. Poland, oh no, I didn't give you the Poland article. All right, so let me go and just explain it to you. Poland did the same thing. Poland is now also issuing out potassium iodide. And so if you look at it from both ways, either A, Russia is going to attack Ukraine with a nuclear weapon or NATO forces, or B, the nuclear power plant could be compromised and cause problems. So which is it? Because so far, I mean, with Ukraine, they could be saying the same thing. It could be simply because of the shelling of the nuclear power plant. But then why does Poland do it? And the article is going to bring up, I apologize, I totally forgot to copy it over. Poland said the same thing. It's either A, because of an attack, or B, because of the nuclear power plant. But that's not true. And let me call out on that. Let me show you the geography of the area. Here we go. We see Ukraine. We see Poland over here. And of course, all the way over here, here's Russia. Okay. Prevailing winds, the winds because of the currents and because of the rotation of the earth and stuff, etc., practically speaking around the world go in this direction. In fact, even more so when it comes to Poland and Ukraine, if we actually go to this picture, you can see the prevailing winds up here pretty much always come from the southwest. So they go up in this direction. Prevailing winds going in this direction, Now, I don't know exactly where the nuclear power plant is. From what I remember, it was down here in this area. Even if it was up here, that still doesn't come into play, but I think it's down here. So if shelling or whatever the case may be compromises that nuclear power plant, then it's going to send a fallout area. It's not going to detonate like a nuclear bomb. It could go in this direction in Ukraine and into Russia. So why is Poland way over here also handing out potassium iodide? Because it's not simply about the nuclear power plant, but they are worried about the nuclear escalation from Russia, therefore causing more exchanges. And of course, NATO has a lot of forces here in Poland, and they're preparing for this. And that's what it comes down to, preparing for a possible nuclear assault. That's what we're talking about, not the politics of Russia and who's right, who's wrong. That's not this video. We've talked about that in the past. We're talking about Goshen prepping, how you need to be prepared for this. Because understand that if Putin does think that the United States is helping Ukraine, which they are, he could easily, and he does believe that, you know what, a nuclear bomb is just a big bomb. He could easily send one our way that could result into an exchange of nuclear weapons. And you know what? Is it going to happen? If you asked me to bet money, are we going to get hit in the United States by one? I would bet probably no. But I've read lots of articles where the experts are saying, I would bet probably yes. Because they believe that our administration and everything else won't do anything to try to stop it or thwart it or send a nuclear bomb in his direction. And again, will or won't we? No, none of us know. None of us know for sure. But you know, when it comes to prepping, it's not about simply just, oh, I'm going to guess that it's probably not going to happen. So, I'm not going to go ahead and prepare for that one. That's insane. Have you seen the way the world is right now? I would prepare for this as much as possible. But preparedness isn't simply about buying stuff. Of course, you should have potassium iodide in my opinion, and actually having a Geiger counter would be helpful too. But preparedness isn't just simply buying things. It's preparing for what's coming by practicing in drills and studying up and reading. And again, that's why I have the nuclear video series I put out. 5-part series. So we're going to come up at the end of the video in just a second. I ask you to please take the time to watch the series. You watch the first one, it'll automatically lead to the second one, all the way down to EMPs as well. But this is stuff that I didn't make up. This actually came from the government, but for the fact that I was a nuclear specialist. This is stuff that we knew with the back of our hand, and it takes away a lot of the guesswork and a lot of the false information out there. Okay, hope you have a chance to watch it. Let's go ahead and watch this video now about the first video in our nuclear series.